Carrie?
Yep.
Yay!
There's Jody.
Here, I'm here, sorry. All right, I guess I'm here, and I would like to call tonight's meeting to order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of
America and
to the republic for which it stands,
one
one nation,
under God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I would like to move to accept tonight's agenda for January 11th, 2021, if I may have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
All right. We are going to begin tonight's work session with Policy Review Committee. So, Ann-Or, take it away.
Isn't that fun? So we literally just jumped out of this meeting, and I'm sure all of you have read through the all of these policies on the that's on our board site. These are first reads, and the first 5, that would be 6 that you see there, were all suggested changes in regulations and laws that came through BOCEs. Appointments and designations by the board is apparently something that we do at our annual retreat every year, organizational meeting, I would say. And we've added a Title IX compliance officer, civil rights compliance officers to that. The annual organizational meeting policy is just about when we have the meeting. And we discovered in our meeting that we try to always have it on July 1st. We have to have it, the policy says the first Tuesday in July, but apparently July 1st has been our aim, so that's good, we're doing that. There's a new policy around absentee ballots that does not reflect anything relative to all that happened in the spring election with sending a ballot to everybody, but it does clarify how people can obtain an absentee ballot and who gets them. But mostly it's the only change that's in there is about military people and just ensuring that folks who need an absentee ballot can get it. And it's spelled out very clearly in that policy. The school safety plans, 5681, that we are required to now include in the school safety plans a contingency plan for a communicable disease outbreak. Go figure. And that part of the plan is due to the state, I believe, by April 1st, and it is underway. And Patty says the plan is not as detailed as our opening plan or the original opening plans, but that it is underway and will be included with all of the other many pages around all the school safety plans. Use of email in the district, 6411. That is going to be reviewed a little bit more by Nick. And I'm not exactly sure. There were questions about encryption of attachments in email. And there's a lot of detail in there about the retention of records and who needs to retain them. Apparently they don't all have to stay in Paul's office, which is a good thing. Sports and athletic program, that's going to be reviewed by Brad. And I don't think there was anything major in there.
Just make sure we're in compliance with Title IX. That's all, really.
Okay. The 3421 Title IX sex discrimination. That is a new policy. We've been looking at this for several months. It was reviewed by our legal counsel, and we still have a couple of questions. This was the policy where they added in a lot of sexual harassment guidance and constraints and how the process for handling complaints, filing complaints, responding to complaints, requiring respondents. And it has undergone review with our attorneys, but we still had some question about these very specific timeframes. We have to respond within 7 days. And in some cases, in the 22 pages of this, it says we have to respond in so many business days, and in other sections, it just says so many days. So that's all we have to clarify at this point. Does that make sense, Danielle? It was just the number of days, and that will finally come through. So we'll have that as a second read.
No, it's a first read, Anne.
I'm sorry, first read, the end of the month with those changes. Records management, I think that was okay as it is listed. We didn't have any further review that needed to happen, so that'll come through. Oh, that's where things are all no longer in Paul's office. The annual reviews on the school census. This is written in a way that's different than what we do, only by the ages of the student, well, actually the children throughout the district. The policy says that we will take a census of all children between birth and age 18 or 21, because we do have special ed students that are over age 18. And in truth, we don't do the census until they're eligible for education. So 3 years old, I think, is that right? Pre-K?
Yeah.
So we will be altering that language just to make sure that we're saying basically age 3, school age children, I believe was the language that we had suggested.
Correct.
Policy 7210 about student evaluation, promotion, and placement is, we have been reviewing this for a while, and we're going to continue to review it. There's a lot of work that Heather has been putting in on this, I believe, Heather.
Well, we're moving the policy to a first read, but we're still working on the regulation, which is developing into more of a student evaluation and placement handbook or manual. We're coming up with some more objective criteria. I don't know, Heather, if you want to jump in and just talk quickly about that. I had mentioned to the policy committee that we met last week with the administrators, and we're developing a committee that will include all the administrators, yourself, and some teacher leaders to really be more objective about that process.
Yeah, that's it. This work. This work really started with some of the administrators and myself, honestly, about a year ago, in looking at how students are placed for math advancement, because it's been more or less done through either parent recommendation or teacher observation. And we wanted to create consistent and objective means for doing that. And so this work is coming together with the policy and regulation work at the same time, which is really nice. But it is complicated because you want to make sure that the objective measures that you're putting in place are broad enough to get the kids who should qualify, but narrow enough so that it's not going to get everybody, because that's not the intention either.
Okay, and just for everybody's background, those folks who haven't read this, the policy is pretty broad in saying that the state testing that we do in 3 through 8 is not the sole determinant of placement. Is that on point, Heather?
Yeah, to the extent that the state assessments might be used, We're not exactly sure, but if so, they would only be a fraction of what would be considered, not the full extent of what would be considered, for
Yeah.
sure. And of
It's
course,
not just testing based. There's a lot of other criteria in there that come from teachers and classroom and
right. And we're also being thoughtful about the role of grades, like report card grades, because sometimes that can be inconsistent as well. And so we don't want, again, we want it to be based on what the child is capable of doing. And so there's a lot of work that needs to go into it, and I appreciate the time to lead that work.
Okay. So that is, that will go into a first read on the next meeting. The next tranche of policies, if you will, cover things about student health, et cetera. So school health services is an updated policy from I think 2017 was the last time. There are no changes to it. The next is on immunization of students, 7511. And again, that is was updated in 2019, and there are no updates to that. It will just be forwarded as is. Student physicals is a 5-page long policy covering how different students will be handled. And there are some regulations that we need to check on this. We've actually been looking at this for a while now and had, we got language from BOCE's legal on what to include here, but we do want to have our attorney look at that language. So that will become under review for a first read next meeting. And is that the end of it? 7512? Yep. Oh, no, 7513, medication and personal care items is another one that is not, it is a revision. I think it was last adopted in 2018, and there's no update to it. Student health records is the same, last adopted in 2017. No revisions for 2021. Hard to believe it's 2021. And pediculosis is 7515, and there is an adoption. For those who don't know, pediculosis is head lice, and this is a policy about that. Basically being revised from 2017 to be very clear that this is not nearly as contagious as once thought, and giving everybody guidelines on how to handle it. And I call this the don't freak out policy, which, you know, we'll be doing well if people don't freak out. 7520 is accidents and medical emergencies. And again, that's a short piece that's from 2018, and we're not making any changes for 2021. Students with life-threatening health conditions, which includes things like allergies, diabetes, epilepsy, 7521. Again, there are no revisions to that since last published in 2017. And the final one is 7522, which is suicide, and there are no revisions from 2017. Oh, that wasn't the last one. Concussion management was last published and revised in 2018. We are making no revisions to that. And child abuse and maltreatment, it's a pretty extensive policy. And it was last published in, almost at the end, last year, 2020. So there are no revisions for this year. Dignity for all students. We've heard this come up before. Policy 7550, again, most recently published in last year, and there are no revisions to it for this year. Sexual harassment of students, 7551 was published in 2017. And the only revision that we're making to the policy in the manual is to refer them to the 3420, which is one of the ones we talked about earlier, in Title IX and sex discrimination. And then there's a policy on student gender identity, which has been talked about and worked through extensively before I got here. Last published in 2017. The only change made to it this year is that we will include a reference to the 3421, that long Title IX and sex discrimination policy, as a note for reference. And I think this is the final one. Notice of sex offenders, policy 7560. Again, last published in 2017, and there will be no changes to that. Supervision of students, last published in 2017, no changes to 7570. And this is about, obviously, just what it says, how students are supervised by teachers or volunteer chaperones. Employment of students of a minor age was last published in 2017. No changes for 2021. And that's the end of that section, long list. I mean, the fact that a lot of them don't have changes means that they're good, solid policies. Anything else that I missed, Danielle or Jen?
Did good, Ann.
All these will be up for a vote in all these except the ones that need continued review if we don't get it by then in 2 weeks.
All right.
24, 25.
Very good. Anyone have anything else for Anne? All right. Then we will move on to our COVID-19 update, which is inclusive of all of the new information coming out about vaccination. Mr. Casari, what you got?
What do I have? I wish I had a more definitive ability to have a conversation with the board. Unfortunately, first of all, we have seen an uptick in the number of cases that we are dealing with, both through isolation and quarantine. Patty has been doing just an outstanding job, working tirelessly with the county and with our staff, with our administrators, to make sure that proper notification is taking place. Based on my conversations, I believe that Patty is really handling it in a very forthright and true fashion in relation to the expectation of the Niagara County Health Department. And I think that while we have seen an uptick in cases, it has certainly made a difference in terms of making sure that the schools themselves are as safe as possible, and that we are isolating and quarantining as needed and necessary. As you can probably imagine, some families and staff meet the news appropriately and others do not. And so Patty and I, along with the administrators, are dealing with that. Some people are more forthcoming than others with regard to positive case situations, but so far, we have been able to catch those as quickly as possible and isolate those individuals, even though in some instances, we've had cases where students who may be waiting on a test or even and still came to school, or we've had instances where we've had a sibling who tested positive, but the parents sent the other siblings to school even after they knew that the other child was positive, and that their children should have been in quarantine. And we've heard excuses, well, no one called me from the county, but you knew your other child was positive. Why would you send your children to school? Those kinds of things. So we've been dealing with those issues, and I think Patty's been managing it very well. So far, even today, we had a bit of an uptick in, we had 2 positive cases, but it led to the quarantine of 4 or 5 staff overall. That's aides and teachers. But again, nothing that we aren't able to manage. So we continue to move forward there. You've seen the just craziness around the vaccination process. And you're on the Lewiston-Porter all. So it started last week. Well, first let me go back. There was some conversation in this conversation. Once the notion of a vaccine had developed, I was having conversations with other school superintendents in my weekly meeting, having conversations with Susan McLaren, had informal conversations in my weekly meetings with Jody in terms of how Lewiston-Porter would approach the vaccination process. Initially, based on conversations with Susan especially, there was some thought that we would be able to require our staff to vaccinate. But unfortunately, we can't. I shouldn't say that we can't. We could, as a board, you could pass a resolution. However, it would be a significant test case, because currently right now there are no organizations, public or private, public especially, including hospitals and the like, that are requiring vaccination. The state is not requiring vaccination. So we might have a significant legal struggle there if it was brought to. And my understanding was, after the email went out from over the break, where I had indicated that we were looking into the possibility of requiring vaccination, a number of our employees who are against the vaccination, who are against a lot of what is happening out there with regard to COVID-19, had, at least from the union standpoint, had sought legal consultation based on my my statement. So I think it would have been met with some opposition, and at this point, and I think it's probably why the governor is approaching it. There's some webinar tonight just talking about trying to educate people on being positive about vaccination. I believe everybody should be vaccinated. I hope that everybody gets vaccinated, but I don't think at this point we can require that, whether that's through administrative directive or board resolution. Go ahead, Jody.
Just to clarify, though, I know you just said that about some employees perhaps looking into legal recourse. That was individuals, and that had just been reported back to the union. The union was not looking. Oh,
no.
Okay, just to clarify.
The union initially, in our initial conversations, felt that we could. They had some informal conversations with their LRS at NICET, and they was like, yeah, we think you can probably require vaccination. So it really would be individuals. I don't think we would receive a fight. I think the teachers union and the state at the state level as well is definitely pro-vaccination. So okay. So that said, you can see the rollout of the vaccination process in New York State is going super well, as you can see by the emails. There has been no, the first official directive or communication that we received was last week when the Niagara County Health Department opened up their 1A facility out at Transit Drive-In, and that included in 1A, phase 1A, were you saw my emails, OT, PT, speech, school psychologists, school counselors, school social workers, behavioral health folks. So that email that I put out was for testing slots. So you would go out, you would click on that link, and it would take you to the New York State Health Department website, but it had the Transit Drive-In testing location. So many of our school health personnel and support professionals, as well as counselors and behavioral health folks, they took advantage of that and got their appointment. Some went last week, some are going this week. And then obviously you saw over the weekend, they said that the governor said that the state was opening up new 1B, and all K-12 employees, higher ed as well, were included in that process. I was not anticipating the flurry or frenzy today. I was waiting for an email, much like we received last week from Elise Pignataro from Niagara County Health, that was a little bit more formal in the process. And you click on this, you click on that. We did not receive that. What I received from other superintendents was the link to WGRZ, which had you clicked on that link, and it more or less took you to Erie County. And then about midday, somehow one of our employees who has a connection at Niagara Falls Memorial heard that the Niagara Falls Memorial Medical Center was opening up a clinic, a vaccination clinic at Niagara Falls High School Fieldhouse, and had the link. So she forwarded the link to me. I forwarded the link on. First, I tried the link to see if it was legit, and I actually got an appointment. And so then I forwarded it on, and others were able to get an appointment there as well. I'm seeing other emails where people are getting appointments in Olean General. I'm seeing where some people are getting appointments in Erie County, but it's really haphazard and totally uncoordinated. Betty, I think you're muted, Betty. Betty, you're muted. Sorry. So it's very haphazard and uncoordinated. I'm hopeful that I'll be hearing from Dan Stapleton tomorrow, that there's going to be a more coordinated. I mean, you would think, folks, that they would do this by your birth date or your birth month, or your, if you fall in that category, they would have, okay, people that you could sign up on these days at these times if you fall, just to have it a little bit more stratified and strategic, or the last 4 digits of your who knows, something.
You think that they would just come to the school.
Well, right. And all of the Orleans Niagara BOCES superintendents have offered to Dan Stapleton, use our schools, come in and set up a clinic. It would be much easier than sending our people out, because I basically told them, make your appointment, we'll figure it out. I'm not going to not let people go. So, but yeah, I totally agree. Niagara County Health Department says absolutely not. They will not be doing it that way. So I don't know. We're just going to have to continue to move forward in this fashion, and hopefully there'll be a more stratified or structured way that this is going to roll out.
So having our designation as a LSL wouldn't provide us an opportunity to offer vaccination?
That's just for testing, that's just right. For testing vaccination.
So basically the county just has no plan for vaccination.
Well, I don't believe that there's any coordinated effort, whether it's from New York State Health Department, the Niagara County Health Department, I don't want to blame the Niagara County Health Department because quite frankly, I don't think that they've been given much information themselves in terms of how many vaccines, who has the vaccines. You've got hospitals doing it. You've got large healthcare organizations, Kaleida, Catholic Health doing it. You've got counties doing it. So it's just, and of course, like we had last week, some of our people went because they had some vaccines and they were going to expire. I guess there's a certain time limit on these vaccines in terms of their ability to stay fresh. And so a bunch of our people went over like at 5 o'clock, but they didn't go to the drive-in. They had them at the county emergency health response area over by the jail in Lockport. But we only came to know that because one of our employees knew somebody who knew somebody and said, hey, we got these, come on over and get them. So it's a bit crazy. It's a bit crazy. But we're moving forward with it as best we can. And I think most importantly is, we're being communicative. We're being upfront and honest with people in terms of what's going on, what's happening, and for better or for worse. The response I get internally is that people appreciate the level of communication that's taking place across the district. And, people feel comforted when you speak to them and that they have some sense of what's going on, particularly in these absolute crazy times. And, from day one, I've tried to do that because I just feel like it makes people feel better if they have someone speaking to them. Like they think that someone knows what's going on, even when they don't. It's reassuring, I suppose. It's reassuring.
I think you've been very clear all along that when you don't know, you say, I don't know. Because
I don't know.
Obviously, we're getting this information. You're getting the information in real time, and I think it is reassuring. People know that, or as on top of it as it possibly can be.
Yeah. I mean, from a teaching and learning standpoint, we continue to move forward in the hybrid model and the remote model. That's going relatively well. I don't know, Patty, is there anything you want to add to anything I've said about?
Well, I just want to mention that we had 2 positives today that impacted other people, but we did have a couple more that we reported for students who were not on campus since prior to the break that really have no impact. And we're seeing so much of the transmission happening family to family, and it's really not happening in school. And I think that is the message that we've been saying, and we really still have not had a case that they actually traced back to the school. And I'm not saying that it can't happen, but I'm saying that they have not traced one back to us. I think it's important that the community knows and that you are aware. Niagara County does not have the staff it needs to do the work that they need to do right now. I mean, the contact tracing alone is so far behind that they're not able to reach out to the families in a timely manner. So the school districts have been doing a lot of that work really on their behalf. So they'll send me a list with the name, date, and time, and the length of quarantine and the look back. And we really do all those contacts. The principals have been working tirelessly on this. I can't say enough about the work that they've been doing. It's been a heavy lift for them. While I'm able to do some of it and I kind of coordinate back and forth and I'm the intermediary, the principals are really doing a lot of that work for us. And it's evenings and it's weekends and it's holidays and it sadly never ends. The vaccines, I shared with my committee that I was able to get mine scheduled and I'm very excited. It's not going to, having the vaccine is really, it's not going to stop the mask wearing. We are still, even with the vaccine, it won't create immediate herd immunity. The community needs to know that as well. Just because we have our vaccines, we still have to social distance, wear our masks, and engage in really good hygiene habits. There's my lecture for today.
Let me ask you a question. This is a 2-part vaccine, correct?
The 2-part vaccine. So depending on which one you get, there's a different amount of time. One, I think it's the Moderna you get in another 3 weeks, and the Pfizer you get, I think, in 4 weeks or something like that. So when you go for your first vaccine, they'll give you an appointment for your next.
That was going to be my question. It's going to be so discombobulated to try to get an appointment for your second one. It's just mind-boggling.
Well, so we've already had a couple employees that have gone through 2 phases.
Okay.
And it went very smoothly. You know, those are, of course, people that are in they're emergency responders. So they were in the 1A phase. We really weren't, if you remember, the first conversation was that 1B was going to be towards the end of the month, early February. So they are moving this ahead fast and furious, but I don't think Niagara County was prepared to start this quickly.
No, as of last Tuesday, it was going to be end of January, early February at the earliest. And I think the governor got upset at the rate that the vaccine was going out and just arbitrarily said, without really allowing people a time to plan for it. You know?
Yeah, so I think everyone's really doing the best that they can in the situation at hand.
So Paul, Patty, whomever, back in the first opening plans and the guidance that we got from the state, there was something about if we were over 9% positivity rate for a 14-day rolling thing. I don't know if that's still in place. I read that the county, Niagara County, is over 9% just the last couple days.
Completely not in place. If we were following the guidance, whether it's in the reopening plan or the governor's cluster, we would all be in red. Yeah. They are not following that in any way, shape, or form. It's all now based on hospitalizations.
Okay, good.
So while they have, I don't know. You know, we've got.
Which, by the way, my mother is currently at Niagara Falls Memorial Medical Center, not for COVID, and they are full. She just waited a day and a half in the ER for a bed.
Yeah, it's raging. It's raging. It's raging. There's no question. I mean, and we're actually here in New York State, because I think that we take it, we're doing, I mean, you read the stories in California and Texas, it's completely out of control. It's completely out of control. So God willing, we'll continue to get people vaccinated, and you know, hopefully, and we're just going to get into the heart of the flu season, and it's hopefully things are going to be okay, but we'll see. In terms of teaching and learning, Heather, I don't know if there's any, I mean, we're doing well with the hybrid model, the remote model. Anything you wanted to add there?
We continue to get requests for changes from one program to another, and we are responding to those changes as we receive them. It ebbs and flows depending on, you know, what's going on in the news, or, you know, we got some requests prior to the holidays because people were concerned. And I guess the bottom line is we're on top of it, and we're being responsive to what our parents are requesting. And I just want to take a moment to applaud all of the administrators in our district, but particularly Patty. She has been doing tremendous work that she never dreamed that she would have to do, and none of us envy her doing. And so I just can't believe the things that she has done this year, and Paul as well, for his leadership of all of us. It's just been remarkable that we are still getting kids educated every day. And so kudos to them.
Well said, Heather. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
So that's our little COVID-19 update. It's fun.
Okay. Now we're going to move on to something later. The budget. We're going to have our preliminary budget discussions, just a preliminary discussion of setting our budget calendar and some budget updates on the state and federal level. So Dr. Grupka, switching from your health professional cap to your assistant superintendent cap. Take it away.
So, usually by now I have a calendar out. We kind of have a plan. I started thinking about the tax cap. So right now, everything's kind of pushed back because we're still waiting to see what's going to happen with these 20% withholds. And we just received some payments. The what month are we? The end of December, and those we didn't really get any withholds on, but we did get some withholdings on, interestingly, our child nutrition, but only the state portion. UPK, they're still withholding, and there was something else that they withheld. It wasn't a significant amount, but odd. Charter school funds. So, but we really need to see what's going to happen moving forward. I don't have our CPI yet. I'm guessing it's going to be between 1.5 and 1.8. I don't have the BOCES exclusion yet, so I can't even really do the tax cap correctly. So I can kind of give myself a little bit of an estimate, but it's going to be a challenging year. Nobody has a calendar out yet for what the budget's going to look like. Nobody has really proposed what a vote might look like this year. And I think that that's kind of holding everything up. So I think a lot of things are going to get backed up. I am hoping to have a budget calendar out for our next meeting. Marissa and I briefly talked about that. And Erie One has a model of what they're hoping to do. And we're going to use that instead of using the normal guidance that we use. Right now, I'm really hoping that we will, and the most I can hope for at this point is a neutral budget from the state. I think we're in a good place because we were able to carry over some of our transportation from last year, some of our transportation funds, not knowing whether or not the need to pay them was going to come to fruition or not. So we had a little bit of wiggle room this year based on our carryover encumbrances. This COVID thing was not inexpensive. And
I'd like to say that Patty mentioned that we've had about 30,000 plus withheld in this year's budget. Patty mentioned the categories, but we did have at the end of last year, which still is there, about $254,000, almost 20% withheld in our last couple of payments in the 2019-20 school year. And so that can't get lost in the shuffle, that money is still, quote, technically being withheld, and we're still owed that money. So Patty's absolutely correct. We'll hopefully have a budget calendar out at our regular board meeting this month, looking into February and March. But the governor had his state of the state today. I didn't get a chance to listen to it. I know that everybody was excited about pot and gambling. So.
Revenue, looking for revenue.
Absolutely. Pot and gambling are the two hot items right now.
Well, everybody better start smoking soon because the gambling the gambling has gone away. So as you know, many of our funds come from lottery and VTL, and that is down 80% this year. So since a chunk of our money comes from that, it's a little concerning. I know that they're talking about a second CARES Act, but remember, we haven't received anything yet in the CARES Act. So we got a $234,000 deduction, and we haven't seen not a dime of it yet. So
Patty, have they mentioned anything yet about maybe excluding some of the COVID expenses to make our tax cap higher, like in the how you can exclude the capital stuff? And
yeah, they haven't
yet.
No.
Patty, any word on FEMA? How about our FEMA money?
No word. Every other school who applied has been declined. We haven't yet been declined. What they are saying is they will not accept anything that was related to reopening the schools. So essentially anything that was purchased after July 1st, I'm not sure that they're going to count for.
You work pretty closely with that liaison to make sure that you became best friends with that guy.
Yes, I know all of his hobbies. We talked on a pretty regular basis. It was a lot of time. That being said, I'm hopeful that we'll get some of it.
You guys can get in a formaldehyde trailer somewhere.
We're gonna, yeah, right. No, I don't want anyone to be involved in drugs, but I do think that we need to think about the fact that we really do need to figure out where that money is going to come from, because the lottery was a chunk of money that we were given by the state.
Yes, for the participants and attendees, we are not promoting the use of
Absolutely not.
cannabis.
I'm a non-smoker. I'm not a drug user. We're not going to do that.
Absolutely. But start buying those scratch-offs. We need you to buy those
scratch-offs, yeah.
Do you know, has there been any progress or word or anything on the tax assessment and all that money that we're holding on to?
No, so you're talking about the CWM money where we had to put some money away in a tax surcharge. That has not gone anywhere yet. They're going back, the attorneys are kind of going back and forth on what is the company really worth. So everyone kind of agrees that they're worth less if they don't get the permission to continue creating more fillable space. But the reality is they won't disclose their financial statements. And if they don't disclose their financial statements, we really don't know what they're worth. So that's where the
a couple of things we should mention. So believe it or not, the general man, the owner over there, called me and said, we're getting close. What do you think? What would you expect? I said, we know that even if we were to accept their proposal for their valuation, that we're not looking at a significant impact to the taxes of the other members of the community. So
we already raised their taxes. We already raised the member of the community's taxes for that. We've been overcharging the community for the last 3 years so we could put the money in the tertiary.
That's true.
So their bill has basically already been spread out into the community.
To a certain extent, you're absolutely correct. Yeah, good point. But moving forward with a new valuation, it would not be hugely impactful. So that said, he said, well, what would be acceptable to the district? I said, well, really, I would prefer that we're not dinged going back. We're willing to go forward, but let's not ding us going back. And so, I don't know where that, again, but ultimately I said, this is in the hands of the county, and our attorneys are just sitting there as kind of secondary to the whole matter. But yeah, I mean, that property, and they're doing more things back there than they're leading on. There's no question about it. So it's worth more than they're saying it's worth. Is obviously both of the pits are the one pit is full, so they're not doing as much work, but they're definitely doing work back there. So hopefully they'll come to some resolution.
All right.
I should also mention that been working with Dan Lalanich and Mark Laurie on a I think what is going to be a really solid presentation to the legislators at the NOSBA breakfast. I've laid out, took some of the things that we did in the fall and are adding a column, but really laying out the impact of this pandemic and the fact that the governor has not been forthcoming or transparent himself in terms of distribution of CARES Act fund. The first CARES Act passed in last March 27th. And, then we know that there's been $82 billion specifically earmarked in this $908 billion relief package that was just passed on December 27th that is supposed to specifically be earmarked to pre-K-12 schools and higher ed. And, you know, again, I just don't want that offset by a pandemic adjustment. And so we're going to be focusing on that with our legislators for sure. But yeah, I mean, I think we put together a good presentation to make our case to them. But to the extent that they have, our legislative team has any real power in the process, well, that remains to be seen, you know.
As a segue to that, the breakfast is the Saturday, the 23rd at 9 in the morning. So everyone wants to Zoom in. And as of now, I know we have all of these state representatives, and we've also invited our two congressmen, Chris Jacobs and Brian Higgins. So hopefully they will be able to join us and maybe shed a little light on the federal side of things. Obviously, things are kind of up in the air over there too. So I guess we'll wait and have
Jody, I know we've got the meeting on Wednesday night.
Yeah.
Dan and Mark were asking, is there a Zoom link? I said I hadn't seen one yet.
Oh, you know what? That's a good question. I'll make sure that Leslie gets that out. I was trying to get all of that organized today. So I'll get something to you first thing in the morning. Great.
And can you just make sure that when she does that, she makes sure that, and like I said, that Dan,
you are,
Mark,
yeah.
Dan, myself, and Mark are all co-hosts.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you can share the, okay.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I never got a chance to look at that today after I talked to you, so.
Yeah, like I said, you've got the first 4 slides, and I think the last
Yeah.
2 slides are NOSBA related.
Okay. Did anyone have any other questions about budget at this point? Obviously, this was a very preliminary discussion, and we'll, you know, kind of get more of an outline of it in the next 2 weeks. But did anyone have any other specific questions for Patty or for Paul before we go forward? Okay. We're going to move on to our NYSBA convention update. This got pushed a little bit, so we're just kind of recapping now. So obviously the convention this year was virtual, which was you know, a different format than we were used to. Just to start out the discussion, you know, having attended the convention for a number of years, I did think that this was useful in the fact of the educational sessions. It gave us an opportunity to kind of take our time and, you know, really kind of delve into the subjects that we liked. There wasn't, we weren't getting shut out of some of the sessions, which has been an issue over the past couple of conventions. You're trying to physically get in the room. And also, you know, having it laid out for, you know, the couple of months, we could go back to it, kind of take our time and work through them. So I will open up the floor if anyone wants to jump right in. I know that several of us have, you know, shared some of the reporting. And I know too that probably everyone didn't get a chance to really sketch that out, and they just have something just to share. So broadly, what was the takeaways from the convention, or if you want to dive into one of the sessions that you took that you really thought was worthwhile? Who wants to start? And I can't see everybody on my screen, so why doesn't any who'd like to start?
I can start. I don't have my my notes here because I was away and I haven't been back to my office, and my notes are at the office. But I did notice that as far as the format goes, I thought it was fantastic that you got to basically, you know, there's always that thing, well, I want to go to this, but I want to go to this, and they're at the same time. So you got to go and you got to see them both by waiting and watching the video for one of them. And that was really nice. The biggest one that really had the biggest impact on me was the one I attended about the student mental health and also staff. and how during COVID and also looking into the future, that we're going to have to really look at what we're doing to not only support students' mental health with you know, those staff that are dedicated to that, but also just to just recognize the fact that, you know, we're setting these kids up basically in this big cycle of remediation now, because they're all have gaps and they're going to have to try to be caught up unless there's a big shift in standards, and how that's going to affect both the teachers and the students going forward, and what kind of things that we might want to be looking at. I don't know if we have a response to trauma team. Do we have one of those? Do we have a trauma? Anyway, there was a big talk about that. A lot of schools have these little teams that are basically there to respond specifically to trauma, like if perhaps a student lost a parent or a sibling or something like that. This team gets together and it decides what the official school response to this will be. You know, that's the biggest one that I was impacted by.
Yeah, we do have at each of our buildings, and those teams meet usually beginning of the school year, just to make sure they're all on the same page in terms of how that response is going to look, how that initial communication is going to take place amongst the team members, and then, you know, how that information is then disseminated out to staff and then ultimately students in dealing with the trauma issues. This has been a little bit, this situation that we've faced here has been a little bit more elusive, in that we know that the pandemic itself has put tremendous strain on people's psyche. But oftentimes it's not necessarily visible. You know, I mean, people are kind of going about their, but this, since the closure and the uncertainty and the fear and the just upheaval in people's personal lives and their professional lives, it's caused tremendous strain on students and staff alike. And, you know, I think for example, our school did a real nice job at the high school, bringing in North Point Council, and our counselors are putting out some real good stuff there. And I know that that's planned at the middle school as well. Both elementary schools are really working hard through their Leader in Me stuff to promote, you know, really a positive mental health picture at the schools. But it's been elusive, that's for sure. And it's, you know, the stuff at the convention was certainly focused on that. I mean, there's as you mentioned, Betty, some of the more outward displays of mental health issues, but then there's that kind of just covert mental health issues that people are dealing with on a daily basis that it's difficult to get your finger on.
They also touched on the how to talk to students about some of the stuff that's in the news, like they were talking about with the riots over the summer, and now we've got this other stuff going on here at the Capitol that wasn't mentioned obviously because it hadn't happened yet, but it's just like they were talking too about that, and just about how, you know, schools need to have a plan for how they're going to talk about those things and how they're going to, because kids are traumatized by that too, by what they're seeing on TV, you know, with all this stuff going on.
Yeah, and I've had some conversations at the high school, especially with regard to the whole issue of racial justice and those areas that really need to be more overt at the high school, especially where it's something that is palpable, but, you know, across our district. And
they talked a little bit about how it's not enough just to not be racist. You have to have anti-racism training in schools to teach children
correct.
What the difference is between those two things, right?
Correct, to be overt about it and upfront about it. We're still struggling as a district, I believe, in terms of what and how we should respond to that within our school community. I think we're beginning to have those conversations, but there's more work to be done.
That's all I got.
Danielle, do you want to jump in with something?
What I have my notes up for is I attended the session on policy and nothing was really that exciting, but I think I did share my notes with everyone because I went to do it again today and it already popped, everybody's name already popped up. So nothing really earth shattering there.
Did you find that what you saw in the session was, you know, what we were already doing, or maybe we're doing as well or better? Or
for sure. I mean, most of the things that the hot topics, because it was yearly review and hot topics, a lot of the hot topic items are policies that have come through BOCES, you know, like the remote learning and that type of thing. So we're already really encompassing everything that they were talking about. I think I can't think of anything on here that necessarily stood out that we don't include already.
I think the validating point is we do policy pretty well at Lewiston-Porter.
Yeah.
And we've established a good system to address policy updates, you know. I think we do a nice job there.
Yeah, I mean, just to piggyback on what Paul was saying, I do have a note on equity, inclusivity, and diversity in education. And maybe those are some policies that it says some, not just racial equity for all groups, and it should include cultural competence in student learning objectives, mission statement and vision, library materials, recruiting and hiring. We touched on some of those things that maybe, like Paul said, we could work on some.
I was just thinking about the recruiting and hiring process the other day in relation to that as well. And how we could address that to a greater extent, but it's difficult. It's difficult.
Yeah, for sure. So that's what I have.
I would give a shout out to Lance, wherever he is in Mayville. I know that, you know, at the time that he was on the board, obviously he really took up policy and really, you know, drove us for years. But also every time that he attended the convention, he would go to every single policy. You know, that was really the strand that he picked up on. So I know that the sessions change every year, but I know that he took, you know, everything that he gathered with those and really, you know, fine-tuned what we were doing. So that's kind of why I asked. It's like if you picked up anything else, because I think that he was so in tune with, you know, just practices and, you know, best practices, you know, on top of, you know, his military career, that it really helped to drive, you know, kind of what we do, you know, just so that wasn't always what we did, you know. So that's good. Anne, you want to jump in?
Again, I'm much like Lance, in no way as efficient as Lance, but I did the only sessions I went to were relative to policy, and I think I echo Danielle that it was a reflection that we're doing a good job in that area. I really didn't pick up anything new or nothing revelatory, so that was a good feeling. When you don't learn anything, it's probably an okay day. And those were the areas that I looked at. So I don't really have much to share.
Jennifer?
Well, I think I was a little overzealous in what I signed up for, but I did watch them all. And I did put my notes out there too for everyone to read through. I chose like some of the ones that, just because I was new, I chose some of the areas that I thought maybe I would just make sure I knew what I was doing. And Most of the stuff is things we have talked about in our meetings and our organizational meetings and things like that. And I also went to a few on diversity as well. And I went to the one where they had a student panel, and I thought that was quite interesting to see the different opinions of all the students, where they feel they were maybe not as engaged, or maybe there was a lack of equity or things like that. But overall, I really, it was a lot of information.
Do you think it helped you? Like you said, being a new board member, did it help you?
Yeah, I think so. Going forward, yes, I think it will help.
Good. And I know you had all your reports right out. I was like, go Jen. Charlotte?
I attended the after the mental health one and students. That's a huge concern to me, and I think that it was helpful, informative, and good in terms of planning. One of the questions I do have with the district, and it's just because I don't have knowledge about it, I'm wondering how much staff development we do on mental health with children with trauma. And I see that we do, I see from Heather's statements that the professional development work that we're doing a lot with remote work and all of that. I knew when I was a teacher, we did a lot of mental health work, students of trauma, students of poverty. And I'm wondering if we do any of that in the district. So I found it helpful, and technology is always not my best strength. So I didn't get to a lot of them, but I did do that one. All right.
In response to your question, Charlotte, we absolutely do professional development for teachers on trauma and social emotional health of students. In fact, last February, that was the focus of our superintendent's conference day, but in the staff development offered by our Lewiston-Porter teachers and through ON BOCES, we definitely offer that. And we were going to focus this year, we were going to launch restorative practices across our district this year, but you know, this little thing called COVID kind of got in the way of that. But that's still on the horizon for work that we would be doing as a district moving forward.
Is the staff development ever mandatory, or is it always by choice?
No, sometimes it is mandatory. Like what we do on our superintendent's conference days, that would be mandatory. If it's through our faculty meetings and things of that nature, of course, that would be mandatory. And then last year we were focused on helping the district understand multi-tiered systems of support. So that whole MTSS model. And so that was mandatory for all teachers K through 12. I attended most of those sessions with the teachers. So yes.
Okay, thank you.
Gemma?
I didn't attend, nothing report.
Okay. I would just say, I know I sent a report out. One that I thought was really interesting was the strategies for more effective board meetings. Even though we've been, you know, hundreds of board meetings, there were some interesting takeaways from it when we, more applicable to when we can get a chance to get back to regular board meetings. And it was, some of it was, you know, kind of how to assess how how our board meetings are, have the public assess them through, trying to see how they refer to it, an observation sheet that we could hand out. There was also an interesting thing about like a little takeaway from for people, a little handout for the meetings. I know, we usually will have the agenda out and it kind of has a breakdown of things, but it was really an interesting, like a little pamphlet that we could put together to give out to people at our meetings, just kind of explaining what it is that we do, how we do it. And then you could also include things like our board goals and district goals, and have the the links on there for other things that are important in the district. So there were some just some interesting strategies that could kind of elevate what we're doing as far as increasing that communication, increasing that engagement with the people who come to our meetings. It spent a lot of time talking too about bringing in recognitions and students, and I think that we used to do a really good job of that, and I look forward to doing that again. I think it's been difficult in this virtual format, but I think we need to kind of look at maybe how we can do that a little bit more in this last half of the year too. The other big thing was the pre-conference. I did the pre-conference communications workshop, and I have done that before. Really, communications and board governance was the strand that I followed. But the pre-convention workshop was really interesting. A couple of years ago, I went to it, and it was about crisis communication, and it was a good portion of that workshop was led by the superintendent of schools in Newtown, Connecticut. And it really focused on crisis being a crisis, like a school shooting or some other horrific event that happens that you need to communicate. Where this year they took crisis communication and brought it to what we're dealing with now, which is a health crisis. And I'm not sure that I shared that. I'll do that as soon as we're done. But it really broke down what risk communication was about, which was communicating during emergencies, including this health crisis, and then how to influence specific actions and build support for change, and also how to avoid misinformation, sending mixed messages. There was some really good stuff about checking your sources and sharing other links, and really trying to control misinformation spreading within your community. So I think that was really worthwhile too. And it also, kind of what I was saying about policy, it gave me some reassurance that we're doing this the right way. We're especially, the communication that's been coming from district office, letting Paul, the superintendent, have just that. He's been the voice of the district, and just reassuring, as he had said earlier today. So that was really upheld and reassured by everything I saw during this workshop. So did anyone have anything else to add, or anything that when everyone else was talking about theirs that kind of interests you? Paul, Patty, Heather, anybody? I know it seems like so long ago now. But, all right. Well, I think that even in this virtual format, it was time well spent. I think that we missed. I personally missed a lot of what else you get out of the convention, which is building relationships and networking and seeing people from other districts, and even in these sessions, to watching them recorded, you maybe didn't get as much as you would have if you were sitting next to somebody and you could share your experience with them. So, but I mean, that's the story of our life since 2020, so I look forward to being able to get back to maybe something. I hate using the word normal. I've given up on that because I don't know what normal is going to look like from here, but that was the part of it that I missed. But this definitely was an opportunity to get a lot of information. So I just want to thank everybody for taking part. All right, that is going to wrap up our work session discussion, so I would like to now move on to new business. I'd like to move to approve NA1, approval of the seeker negative declaration for the Primary Education Center emergency crawl space ventilation. If I may have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Any opposed? So carried. I'd like to move to approve NA2, approval of Greater Niagara Mechanical Incorporated contract. If I may have a second.
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 All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? So carried. I'd like to move to approve NA3, approval for new minimum wage, which went into effect December 31st, 2020. The new New York State minimum wage is $12.50. If I may have a second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Yes?
Yes.
Any opposed? So carried. And I would like to move to approve our consent agenda for personnel, if I may have a second.
Second.
Quick discussion. I just wanted to point out that we have received 2 retirements. Both teacher aides, Joy Fabiano and Robin Clark, have both submitted their resignation for the purpose of retirement. So I just wanted to send them congratulations on their retirement.
Yeah, and I'll certainly second that. We definitely will be speaking to their long careers with us when we get to our June meeting, but we are happy for both of our teacher aides who are retiring, Joy and Robin.
All right.
I did want to just, I know it's a question, but this was a fairly lengthy new business for a work session. And with no notes, if you did have some questions, certainly please. But probably most important is the fact that at least starting next Tuesday, boys varsity swimming and JV swimming along with bowling will start. We just had a communication with the Lewiston Event Center, and Brad Helgash is starting to work with them to put in protocols to begin our bowling season, and then with our swimming program. And I should mention that all of the schools in the Niagara Frontier League are, the bowling centers that they use are open, whether they're in yellow or orange, and they're set to go with appropriate protocols. In both instances, we again are not, we're not offering any transportation to the events. And I should mention with swimming, it'll be a little interesting this year because they're going to be virtual swim meets. So we won't have any visiting teams with us. In other words, because you're just swimming for time, they'll take place at the same time, but you'll have one referee in our building and the other referee in the other building, and they'll just race in their lanes for time depending on the event. And they'll compare notes virtually at that moment to see who won and who lost. So we won't have any visiting teams coming into our school for the swimming program. And in both instances, we're not going to be allowing spectators as well. So that's going to, and Brad is working on a live streaming for swimming for sure. We're not sure how we're going to handle that with bowling, but that's how both of those programs are going to be kicking off when we get into next week.
Is bowling going to be the same as swimming? Like you'll just bowl in your own home bowling alley?
No, the bowlers are going to be, most of the lanes have the plexiglass up, but there was, for those of you who bowl, bowling is a very lane specific sport. So the conditions at Rapids are different than the conditions at the Niagara Event Center versus the conditions at the Tonawanda Bowling Center. And your lane conditions are very critical to a bowler's success or failure. And so in an effort to be fair, you got to bowl on the same lane conditions, the same amount of oil on board 22, so to speak. I'm speaking not as a bowling expert, but more as a bowling layman. But so the bowling teams will be coming together, but they will have specific protocols. I believe it's only two students per lane. A lane being two alleys, so only 2 students. That, of course, they'll be fully masked up. If you've watched ESPN at all, if you maybe they do occasionally have collegiate bowling on, and you'll see them all masked up and how they're separated. It'll look somewhat like that, for the lack of a better understanding of what I'm trying to show you, or tell you. But there will be significant protocols in place.
Okay. All right. Does anyone have any further questions? Then all in favor? Any opposed?
Aye.
I'm sorry? So carried. All right.
Brad Helgash reminded me that I'm a hell of a bowler. Actually, I did win my league back in the day. Just saying, I wasn't.
Good to know. It's good to know, Paul.
I like bowling.
Huh. All right. Well, now that we know that Paul's a fine bowler, I would like to move to adjourn.
Get about a 195 average. I just like for the record. I mean, it was a pretty good bowler, you know. Just saying, guys. They carried me for handicap. The guys I bowled with were like 220, 225 bowlers, but I had a 195.
When the pandemic is over, we're going to have a Board of Education bowling team. Is that what you're saying? And you're going to be the leader? No.
I will not be the leader, but you can use me as the anchor. How about that?
That's great, because
Good.
I always did better with the bumpers.
I need the bumpers.
All right.
Not much of a bowler.
You know who could bowl?
Huh?
Praise-me was a bowler.
That was not on the application, and so I'm sorry. I cannot.
He was a hell of a bowler. He was good at all kinds of
those bowling shoes.
He could shoot pool pretty well. He's a good golfer, but he was a hell of a bowler.
Euchre. If you want to play euchre, I'm your girl.
All right.
Are you looking for a partner? Maybe we could do that. Board of Education euchre tournament.
I'm in.
All right. Okay, now I'm really going to move to adjourn. Would anyone else like to talk about any other sports or games? Darts? Maybe some darts. All right. I'd like to move to adjourn if I may have a second.
Second?
All in favor?
Yes.
Yes. All right. We'll see everybody in 2 weeks. And I'm
Good night.
from all of us before that. All right.
Thank you,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.